This is the Allura Code, a transmission for creators, sensitives, and visionaries who know they're built for more, who can feel the signal beneath the noise. Here we decode the hidden patterns running your life, the ones shaping your wealth, your relationships, your body, your art. It blends human design, field energetics, ancient tech, and quantum energetic architecture to recalibrate your system back to truth. You will learn to tune into your body, recognize what truth feels like, and use that as your guidance. This is a multidimensional approach to allow the whole of your being to come together in a convergence of self-discovery and alignment so that you may begin live from full alignment and press play on life. This isn't self-help, it's self-remembrance. Each episode is a map, a key, a mirror. If you dare to meet the real you beneath the programming, welcome home to the Allura Code.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Allura Code podcast. Into a person's field it's so precise. Jen, I'm absolutely thrilled to have you on today.
Well, thank you. That's a beautiful welcome.
She has got a depth and a presence about her that, in my opinion, that I have never seen before. The way that she is able, well, first of all, her understanding of energetics, the structure, the mechanics, and all the little nuances, and her ability to just tune in to my pleasure. So maybe we can just start off with, and you don't have to go crazy detail, but just to give people a little bit of a sense of, where you're coming from, because, for a lot of people who are new to this kind of stuff, the idea of being clairvoyant to a lot of people, it means that you see stuff. And obviously it's a lot more layered than that. So maybe you can kind of just, a little bit about you and just kind of touch on what exactly it is that you, in your own words, how you service the collective.
Yeah, well, let's see. I would say that my life's work is really about consciousness and service to sentience and the integration between those two poles. And my day job is working as a clairvoyant, as an extrasensory, where I tune into people and their fields and their issues and help guide.
Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Jen Thompson. So Jen and I have done a fair bit of work together in the past. She is a practicing clairvoyant, and she has got...
But I also do coaching where I do just as I said, where we utilize our consciousness in order to integrate and serve the sentient body, in other words, the emotional body. And I would say that is my purpose, my mission. It's kind of like, I like to think of it like the clairvoyant readings are kind of like fish.
Okay.
And the coaching is more like teaching people to fish,
I see. Okay.
and getting deeper into how we can perceptually position ourselves to be the most expanded, loving versions of ourselves.
And what do you find, like, I mean, obviously the two kind of flow together because, you've got to do the work, and then you've got to guide people or show people how to do the work. So is there, like, what are some of the, so traditionally, because I know you've been doing this a long time, what would you say historically are like the two or three most common patterns or occurrences of distortion in people's systems?
Oh gosh. Well, let's see. Well, it's all centered, to me, it's all centered around denial, which is all centered around guilt. So guilt traditionally is looked at as like, oh, I did something not so great and now I don't feel so great about it.
Mm-hmm.
And while that's accurate, it's also any way in which we are not authentic. There's the presence of guilt. So if there's any pull for any reason to not be who you are in any given moment, it's because there's some guilt around it. There's some judgment
Mm-hmm.
around your current state of being. So I would say it's all essentially centered around that guilt. that
Okay.
there's something wrong with me as I am, and that I have to be different in order to earn something or to get something or to have the experience I want to have.
Hmm.
I would say that that is kind of the cornerstone, and that's why so many people's core wound is I'm not enough, or I'm too much, or there's something fundamentally wrong with me, therefore I
Hmm.
can't be in my authentic vibration. I have to strive or pretend or in some way be other than what I am.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, I mean, they don't even know who they are, and
Sure.
I don't mean that from like a, like I'm a scientist or I'm a welder or anything like that, because that's all just sort of surface level identity. What I'm talking about is you know, and maybe add to this, because you've obviously got a unique perspective, but it's this idea of of being able to see the noise in and around us about about the mind drawing us to this as an identity block, or this as an anchor, or this or there's literally thousands of potential manifestations of how the mind likes to attach itself to external factors, and that in and of itself, and that's and the thing I think where people screw up is they think that that's who they are, and it's not like this, connecting with this deeper awareness within, which is what you help people to cultivate. And I know because we've done some emotional work together, and I actually saved the recordings, and I like to go back to them. Some of them I've got were like from like 3 years ago, and it's funny because it's still as what you shared with me then is still as valid today as it was back then. So, but then there's this piece of this outward identity piece. So how do you notice that coming up with like, I guess it can come up in like a million different ways, eh?
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. But yeah, I would say what we're talking about basically is ego, right?
Mm,
And I don't see a problem with ego. It's like, I think what you're getting at is like our true identity is awareness.
mm-hmm.
And you could say like that's the room. And then ego is like the paintings on the wall and the dressings of the room.
Mm,
And there's nothing wrong with that. I want to dress my room up. I want to crystallize things that resonate with me. But where it becomes a problem is when we don't recognize we're the room,
right.
and we don't recognize the fluidity of these set dressings, and we also calcify so many judgments from that unconsciousness. So I would say that's where it becomes painful, and that's where we run into suffering and blocks and problems,
Mm,
and that's ultimately what I help with. But I'm not of the mindset of dissolving the ego into nothingness, and or that it's like
no.
a problem. Other than that, it can create through unconsciousness, and therefore through judgment,
Mm,
and that can be painful.
mm,
So I definitely work with people to unravel that and to become conscious of that first and foremost, right?
mm.
But ultimately, in and of itself, it's not a problem from my perspective.
Okay. Well, yeah, and I mean, and actually, this is a concept that I've just started to play with a little bit as well, which is this idea of ego integration. Because I mean, whether people want to believe it or not, the ego is not separate. I mean, it's still it's that aspect of ourselves that is, and I really spare using the word healing because it implies that there's something that needs fixing, that there's
Mhm.
something broken, but
Sure.
which is really not the case. It's just it's just a level of bringing awareness to something that's currently being obscured by a thought or by a belief pattern or whatever, a behavioral pattern or whatever it is. So now, in terms of like, how has your work evolved in terms of, because obviously your awareness as a practitioner, your awareness as a clairvoyant, as a human, as a Jen, as a this, as a that, all these things that kind of flow into this matrix of what you do for, as a gifted person. So how has that evolved for you in the last few years?
Gosh, that's a good question. I want to say that it's deepened,
Mm-hmm.
at least, definitely in my own self to self world and practice.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a constant deepening or going through more foundational levels of the onion, um, get unraveling, things that are more foundational.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in terms of my practice with other people, I would say that, that deepening that I've afforded in my own being allows me to facilitate at a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would say like part of what that looks like is just being more and more comfortable and at peace and being able therefore to be that more authentic
Mm-hmm.
and less in my head
Mm-hmm.
and less in anxiety, more nervous system regulation. And, and that obviously translates to the client and the field that we work co-create together in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say that like it did take me quite a while to get to this place where my knowledge really lives on a nervous system level. It's not just like a conceptual thing or a practice that kind of can feel like spinning your wheels a bit in the sense of like it's 2 feet forward and 2 feet back and 1 foot forward and 1 foot back can really feel like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So you
as
so you feel like you're at a much deeper embodied level now, and because obviously that's going to create a much deeper resonance with what you're doing, because your signal becomes stronger, but it also becomes clearer and
right,
becomes a lot more precise. It's the gray areas tend to do this, and so it becomes like it's either a simple yes, I want to work with that person, or no, it's pretty cut and dry.
for sure.
Well, I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
speculating because that's what I've noticed. So,
yeah,
would you say that has been an experience for you as well?
definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, can you give me an example of like a case study with somebody that you've worked with, or like how you used to relate, say, 3-4 years ago with working with people to say now? You don't have to give any names or anything, but just like, I'll give you an example. So I'll use my real estate as an example. So, 10 years ago, it was all energy. And I can get the same work done now in half the time because I understand the protocols and the language and everything at a much deeper level. So that's an example of what I mean.
Let's see. I would say like in my it looks different whether we're talking about my reading space or my process coaching space. I would say in my reading space, it's like I feel like I'm able to get to the core of what they really need to hear quicker, or I spend less time kind of like going in circles with them. So I feel like before I would really let them lead it in terms of the question, and I would be like the dancing monkey,
Okay.
whatever the question would be. And to some degree, that's still the case. But at the same time, I feel like I'm able to take them deeper into what they really need to hear versus what they think they want to hear.
Mm.
Um, and in my process coaching space, I would say I track a similar pattern where I would give them a lot more space to kind of go into circles and spiral out in what I would call story.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have some space for that. We need to dip our toes in there, but I feel like I'm able to guide them a lot quicker into again what they really need
Mm.
and spend less time sort of spiraling.
Okay. And so maybe talk a little bit. I mean, I think for most people, they can speculate what a reading is, but in terms of I mean, I know what it is because I've done some sessions with you, but in terms of, the collective, maybe just talk a little bit about what that is and, what it's led to create and what the process can look like and maybe a couple of examples.
Yeah, so the idea is that everything's energy.
Hmm.
So your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences, the future, the past, it's all an energy frequency, it's all signature. So what I do in a reading is just tune into that. I absolutely center my readings around my clairvoyance in the sense that this is my main modality, but I also allow for the other clairs. So sometimes the information comes through clairsentience, which is emotional, claircognizance, which is like just a knowing.
Mm.
Sometimes it's even clairaudience, which is hearing. And so yeah, it can be all sorts of different ways in which the information comes through. I'm not always totally in control of that in a sense.
Mm.
Even if I'm focusing on a clairvoyant center, things can pop in other ways. But primarily, where I sit in a reading is clairvoyantly. So that is the center of your head, your third eye, in other words. And I get information that way. So,
Okay, so question. So are you getting information in your head, like your mental movie screen, or can you also, like, if you were to shut your eyes, do you also get a screen on the back of your eyelids? Or if, say, you had a blindfold on and you had your eyes open, can you get input that way as well?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yes, all of the above.
Okay.
Um,
Which one is more powerful for you, the internal one or the external?
I'd say the internal,
Okay.
but sometimes the external is so there that it's distracting.
Hmm.
And I think that that's part of why perhaps it hasn't fully, come online in that way, because it can be very hard to function in the 3D world when you are so turned on that way.
Hmm.
So I would say my internal screen. There's a couple different screens in there, but yeah, my
Okay.
my internal
Interesting.
screen.
Okay. Do tell.
Well, it's like there's okay, so I can imagine an apple on my
Okay.
screen and I can really see it there. I'm looking at it in a sense.
Mm.
And but then you can also think of an apple, and there is like a visual that goes along with that. It's kind of more internal in a way.
Mhm.
Is the way I would describe it. It's like you're getting a visual when you think of an apple. Like think of an apple.
Mhm.
You're getting an image, but it's kind of like a flash, and it's kind of what I would call more internal. And then there is like my screen, which is more like watching a movie, and it's a lot more vivid and a lot more continuity in the image.
Okay. And I tend to get that sometimes, not so much like inside, but because I like to play the game with the blindfold.
Hmm.
So I put the blindfold on and I open my eyes. Like, I mean, nowadays, like it's gotten so much more vivid over time. Um, like I call it shapes in the shadows. So you can like kind of make out what it is. Like it's a house, or I see a lot of faces.
Hmm.
I don't know what they mean because I haven't been to school like you did, right?
It
Um,
means someone's watching you.
oh,
Mm.
so you've been spying on me for the last 3 years. Gotcha. But then when I actually like start looking, at first it's just like a bunch of vivid colors. Like it's usually like like neon green and purple.
Mm.
And then occasionally this portal will open up and I'll see a very clear vision as like as clear as I'm looking at you right now. So I mean it happens, I don't know, maybe once a month, and it usually only lasts, because I can usually only hold it for like, a few seconds, and it's annoying because I'd like to hold it longer and use it for for the intended purpose. But yeah, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
So now when you get it, like, are you getting a whole scene and it's like a movie and that's how you're getting your information?
So it can be all of the above. It can be like a full-on movie like you're talking about where there's like not just an image but a moving image.
Okay.
And then it can also be like a flash of something, or I can see colors like the energy of something, and that I can kind of it's that connects me to my claircognizance where I just kind of like know what that color means or why it's there, what it's
Mm,
doing.
okay.
And then, looking at auras and energy for so long, you do kind of develop just an understanding of what that would mean.
But yeah, I mean, you've literally been doing this your whole life.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember being like 6 and my mom's tucking me into bed and I'm like, "So why aren't we talking about like the light show behind your eyes when you close your eyes? Like there's a light show, I'm seeing shapes, I'm seeing all these geometric patterns. Like how are we not talking about this? Like this is really pretty. Like we should talk about this." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Really, eh?
Yeah, like, it's just black for her when she closes her eyes, and I'm
Huh.
like, "Oh, okay." That was my first clue that something was going on that maybe not all people experience,
Mm.
and then, yeah, I got my first tarot deck at age 12, and it's been a lifelong, exploration in that way.
Mm.
I used to see, like a kind of like static, like on a TV, like dark colors and static, and this would show up when there was discordant energy, when I wasn't feeling well,
Mhm.
and I would run white energy until that static would become like a creamy white.
Mhm.
No one taught me to do this, right? I was just,
It's
exploring.
it's because you're tapped in. I mean, and I can relate. For me, it's more about coming up with concepts and ideas. Mm, But like, I came up with it's a healing modality. And I just took a little from column A and a little from column B and a little, a pinch of this and a dash of that, kind of threw it all together. And it's like, okay, let's see what we can do with this. And it actually turned out that it's a viable, marketable, workable system that it not only calibrates, it reroutes and recodes energy at the deepest levels, because of these little pieces that I just, for lack of a better term, pulled out of thin air, like, and it's just like poof. So yeah, it's, but I just, what, I'm a very visual person, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so just fascinated by the experience that you have, because because of that reason, because it allows me now to imagine, like, and the fact that I've had a little bit of, a little bit of experience playing with it in terms of, so what I would do is I would go on with Chat GPT, and oh yeah, so before I say that, do you like, what's your take on remote viewing and what's that other one called? Psychic. Okay, start with remote viewing, and I'll remember the term, and then I'll say it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that is a service that I offer my clients. I'll get someone panic calling me. I have to be in the airport in an hour and I can't find my passport. Where is it? Or, you know, it's usually documents. People call me in a panic about documents. So that has challenged me to do more what I would call classical remote viewing.
Mhm.
I would say what I do clairvoyantly is a form of remote viewing across the board, really.
Okay, okay.
Um, but the more classical sense is like having a target and
Mhm.
in the world and finding that. So I've done a fair bit of that as well. And this is something that I do feel like anyone can do. This isn't something, just because I have my third eye more open or whatever, doesn't mean that I'm necessarily even better at it. Like I feel like people that just have imagination, can access this. So
Interesting. Now, okay, yeah. So the other one was called. It's so I learned this. I learned this way to access this other thing, and what you do is you do a bunch of what I call. Are you familiar with polarity breathing? Have you ever heard that term before?
no.
Okay, so what it is we're all energy, and our energy has two polarities. It has the yin and the yang. Yeah, and they feel, and they're just one half of charge. So, but they feel when you isolate them, they feel very, 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 very different in the body, and it's
Hmm.
it's it's going to be even more noticeable to somebody who is a lot more sensitive to energy like you or me. And I know you are because we've had this conversation a gazillion times. So what you do with this is you do the masculine polarity, because masculine energy, it's very, it's movement, it's activation, it's do. And then what you do is you intone this very specific vowel sound for, I don't know, you do like 6 or 7 times, and then what it does is, the more you practice it, the more your body becomes familiar with holding this particular polarity. And I mean, there's lots of other things that it does too, which I won't get into, but it activates the ability. It's called like psychic perception or something to that degree. And I don't know if it's because when you do that breathing, it actually stimulates the psychic energy in your body, to which is embedded in your autonomic nervous system, and it just allows your naturally for, you know to be able to do. I mean, there's a gazillion uses for it, um, in terms of healing and stuff like that. Like really good for depression. But yeah, sorry, I can't remember the name of the other one, but it's kind of like remote viewing, but I think it's more just tuning in, and I don't and I think it's more just like with whichever way your body is gonna it puts you in a more receptive state. And yeah, so, but yeah, I can't remember the name of the term or the details of it, but you do that technique, and it puts you into a more, your sensitivities and your awareness becomes heightened because of that, because of the activation. Um so which do you like? So on a day-to-day kind of thing, like, do you have to, like, I know some people who have very accentuated gifts like you do, and you kind of touched on this a little bit. So like when you're out just doing your normal thing, do you sometimes have to like really focus your eyes so you're not like seeing a bunch of weird shit?
Well, again, there's less activation on the open eye. So that does absolutely happen. I would say like the most common thing is I just see flashes of color like all the time.
Oh, really?
So that's pretty common, but I'm so used to that. Um yeah, and then I've had times where, I'm seeing like auras like with my physical eyes and entities and things like this that that's all happened, but I wouldn't say it's like my day to day all the time. Like I'm not living like in an ayahuasca journey
Oh,
level,
okay,
like,
okay.
you know,
Okay.
and I would say that that's a gift because it's very hard to function when you are at that level of like sort of your sensor being blown out in a sense.
Mm.
So I don't have to shut that down, but just energetically, it's very overwhelming to be in the world. Um, Energetically, it's been a challenge, and that's why I say it took a while for me to get my nervous system at a place where I don't just go into a fight or flight response with to all this overload of energy.
Well, yeah, it's funny. It's funny going back to a call that we did. I think it was last year. Or no, it was 3 years ago because I had just moved into that new apartment after my surgery, and we were talking about energy that's yours and energy that's other people's. And I remember you saying that let's start off by assuming that it's all yours. And this has been coming up a lot more lately. And yeah, just kind of unpack that a little bit in terms of your experience again a few years ago to now. Because as you said, your nervous system now is it's a lot more easier for you to navigate because you've created more capacity in your system, to be able to hold and let the distortion move through. And I can relate because I'm picking up shit everywhere. And it's just like, and I've also learned I've got a deeper understanding now too, what it means to actually let the nervous system regulate. So for example, if I get angry, and I mean, for me, that's a fairly, like, getting that really aggressive charge is fairly, it happens frequently. I don't try and shut it down anymore, because you used to think like, oh, I gotta breathe. I gotta be calm. I gotta be, no, 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 no. I let the charge run without killing people. Obviously, there's a decorum that gets adopted. But I've also realized that intensity is absolute freaking genius, because the 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 level of clarity that you get out of it, and your ability to just direct energy to be very single-minded about something is like, so yeah, maybe touch on that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's passion. That's pure passion energy. If you can
Okay.
tap into the what's underneath of the resistance that sometimes come with anger. Um, yeah, I mean, goodness. I mean, I definitely relate to that it was for me what has calmed things is not the removal of reactions or the removal of coarse energy. It's that ability to be free wherever you are.
Mm,
So this is going back to like the authentic
mm.
response, or, I see authenticity as like godly. It's like, it's
It,
the highest frequency.
I was just gonna say it's higher than love.
Yeah. I mean, it is love in action. Like to
Yeah.
be in your authentic self is love in action. And so to be in that anger authentically in a state where you're accepting it, which is loving it
Hmm.
in some way or another, like that's going to be a higher frequency than somebody who's trying to smush down their anger and like be the Buddha, like, oh, I'm focusing on peace. Like that is a very discordant split vibration, and
Mm.
it's going to be a lower frequency than being fully authentically in anger. And when you're authentically able to be where you are, it's also easier to drop down into the resources that are underneath of it. So obviously with anger, there's like a lot of prickliness and probably a lot of resistance, but underneath that is so much passion. And so that's the resourced energy underneath of it. So it's easier to drop in and tap into that, what we would call more responsive state,
Hmm.
than the reactionary state. And it's ultimately like it was about just so much processing so much processing
Mm,
and so much integrating to get to a point where my nervous system was restored enough um, to be able to process the energy, and then also having the tools, the wisdom, it just furthers that ease. But ultimately, like, the nervous system went into a lot of shock, being in this environment, to say it mildly, right? So much of, my life in the world was just being in that shock and being in that fight or flight that resulted from that. And again, once you get to a certain level of um, basically like allowing the nervous system to be where it learn to fully and allow these things to move through to a natural completion.
mm,
It's like that's where all the magic is. Like if you've ever cried, until you can't cry anymore, it's like you feel
mhm,
that,
mhm.
even though whatever bullshit is making you cry is still the same,
Well,
right?
and actually that happened to me recently. Like, I think the last time it was a couple of weeks ago now, but was just like there was some stuff like, I've identified a very predictable pattern whereby, and it really depends on my level of energy too, like my actual physical, like if I'm tired or if I'm feeling run down or whatever, because like you, I am processing stuff pretty much daily. And I've integrated the use of tech to make this, like I've probably created like 20 different GPTs to deal with various different, like I've got a tarot GPT, I've got a business mentor GPT, I've got a nervous system expert GPT, I've got an ADHD specialist, like all these things, right? And because for me, this is the process that I need to go through in order for me to unearth the gifts and the resources and the practicum that is meant to come out of my body. And remember, oh, I wanted to ask you, is your are you is your thing, is it part of a lineage?
Like with my ancestry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I find my mom to be highly intuitive. I found that with my grandmother as well. My grandmother and my mother both played with tarot. I would say that they were more agnostic in their beliefs and were not ever formally, initiated into these gifts.
Mm,
And I don't know my history beyond that. I don't know
okay.
what the ancestry is doing beyond that, but I can definitely see whether they could acknowledge it or not. That I'm not the only one in my
Well, I mean,
family.
I'm sure it sounds like it's pretty self-evident. So,
Yeah, I mean, my mom is a artist and always been super highly sensitive,
mhm.
and I can't tell you the amount of times where, she's just so right on. She's just like
Really, eh?
scary right on
Huh.
about her intuitive hit. So she's definitely got that, even if she's never cultivated it formally or had that
Mm,
experience validated, and she's still pretty agnostic about a lot of stuff.
mm.
But I feel like that's good in some sense. It just keeps you in a really neutral place. And that can, when you're not too precious about it and not too attached to it,
Mm.
a lot can come through.
Yeah. Now, do you still do like are you still doing like ongoing um or like do you still work with a mentor?
Um, I don't. I don't currently. I
Or maybe not like maybe not at this particular time, but do you ever tap in with mentorship when the call arises?
Yeah, and I've had like sisters along the path that I would call them more peers than mentors.
Okay.
Um, but definitely a big part of my life has been getting reflections from those peers
Okay.
and diving into the energy world with them and learning from them.
Okay.
Um, and currently, that's not so much a part of my world. They've all sort of gone home, actually. Um, but I would say that has definitely broadened my gift, being able to be in that space with other people. And then I also did a formal 4 years
Was
of
it was it 4 years?
yeah, I did 4 years of clairvoyant training at a like a mystery school essentially.
Yeah. What was the name of it?
It's called Asclepion.
How do you spell that?
Aclepion, I believe.
Esclapion. Okay.
It's
Cool.
the Greek god of healing.
Okay. I'm gonna look that up because that sounds very interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
they're still going.
mm,
It's a much more, I think, limited version than what I had when I was there. The creator was still alive. He's since
oh,
passed.
oh, I see. Okay.
But yeah, he definitely took me on as like a bit of a protege, and and I did their teacher training program in addition to their like base level programs.
You really, this is really, this is your life's work.
Yeah,
Mm,
definitely. Yeah, so I did have formal training, and then I also did the process coaching program, which is more about diving into the emotional realm, the sentient realm.
That's
And
why that's why you're so well versed in it.
yeah, yeah, and
Okay.
this is one area where I had a bit of a head start in the sense that my mom was really emotionally oriented and, really stressed that anything you feel is valid. And so I grew up with that as a concept. And
Mm,
so I feel like that allowed me to be more emotionally in tune and accepting. Um, so yeah, in a sense, I've been practicing that my whole life as well.
Happy accident?
Yeah,
I think not.
I think not. Yeah.
No, there's
Total choice.
no, I think it was divinely orchestrated
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there's no such thing as coincidences are not, in my opinion anyway, and in my experience. How does your okay, so here's a question. So something I have recently come to understand. So there's this whole, you create your own reality movement, and yes, but I think what it should read is you create the quality of your experiences.
Mm,
Because so what I have come to know, and it might just be because my field, I don't know what yours looks like, but I can speculate what it might look like. It's very open. I would love to see it. And actually, maybe I'll get you to, we can do that after you send me your birth info, and I can pull your chart, and I can send you the report. It's 40 pages, so it's a lot of, there's lots to play with. Anyway, is that because my field is so open, I have less established resources in a traditional sense. So people who have more established fields have their personality traits more readily available and or more dynamic. So, but for me, because my field is so open, I am more susceptible to things that are active in the field, and this would be the same for you. So this is why I think your field is very open and welcoming, and yeah. So, but what it means then is that your your planetary activations play a much bigger role in your life than most people would ever met. Well, because most people are are walking around half asleep, and because they're far more identified with their mind and with form than they are with the energetic piece. So, but I have just noticed, and I've done some playing around with this in terms of my so taken, like, say, the last 5 years of my life, and then I compared it on an astrological line, like on a linear kind of comparison, and it was pretty much like, it was like 99%. So I feel that astrology, because it directly impacts us, because when the planets are doing something, it automatically gets activated in us. However, it correlates regarding our chart, because our chart is kind of like, it's really the coding for our DNA, because there's like this as above so below kind of thing going on, right?
Right.
So for you, and I don't know, maybe you never even paid attention to this, but it's just become very evident to me that the astrology and all that energetic movement plays a much bigger role in one's life, especially mine. And I'm wondering if that's something that that you would agree with or have experienced, or maybe what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely plays a role. And I feel like it's two sides of a coin. I feel like it's there as like a template. And if the more you are on the autopilot of it all, that's where I see more people like bound by it, is
Mm.
when the more on autopilot you are. And I feel like you're also onto something too, by how I'm correlating what you said to human design, where
That's exactly what I was talking about
okay,
pulling your
okay,
chart. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because yeah, I definitely have a good split of defined and open centers, but the open ones are, both head centers, my root.
Same. Oh my
Um,
God. Same here. Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I definitely am
What's
at
your
the effect of the field.
what's your profile?
I'm a 2/4 manifesting generator.
Okay. Do you have emotional authority or sacral?
I think spleen
Okay.
authority.
I'll pull it for you. And then, like I said, I can send you like it's 43 pages.
Nice.
Yeah. So just text me. I won't get you to put it on here, but just text me after.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, human design is really, really interesting. I feel like it's more applicable to me, or it just gave me more value than just studying my natal chart or just studying astrology on its own.
Yeah, because it's more precise, and this is what I was talking about pattern recognition, because there's certain aspects in human design, like people don't need to know what godheads they're connected to unless they're out of pure interest. It's not going to affect their, you know, but like, knowing what gate is within what theme on either side is going to play a role, because the design side and the personality side influence each other. Because if you're doing it just on personality, you're just doing it with you're here. But if you're supporting it with that other side, then then it becomes a question of totality. But then you get into other things too, like if you look at, if it's like a 16.2 or a 3.4 or whatever the point is, right? So that represents those 1, 2, 3, 4 represent the lines, the 6 different lines. Investigator, I forget what the 2 is, the martyr, the uh, the opportunist, which is the 4, and then the 5 is the heretic, and then 6 being the role model. So you then have, depending on what colors they have attached to each gate, those can also represent. So for me, I'm a 3/6, but I've got 9 1s in my chart, which is investigator. So it means like my curiosity level is through the roof. And then so when you're actually able to, what I can do for you actually is I'll isolate the design side from the personality side. And when you do that, it really gets interesting, because I did that with myself. And the design side, I was like oh, I get them mixed up. I think a projector.
Mm-hmm.
right? Where there was no definition whatsoever. There was a couple of hanging gates and it was basically wide open. And then on the personality was where all the, I only have three centers with 2 channels, right? So it's very minimal. Half of my gates are hanging. So they're like, so yeah. And I would imagine yours is very similar. So I'd be really curious to pull that up and see what kind of magic is there. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
love that.
So, okay. Well, I want to honor your time as best I can. And it's, according to my clock, it says 4:30. So do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to leave us with?
Mm. Well, my main message is that there's nothing wrong with you, that you can't think, feel, say, or do anything that renders you unworthy of love, unworthy of light. We can express imbalance, absolutely, but that doesn't render you unlovable. And my biggest sort of set point and mission and message is just that you can't think, feel, do, say anything that takes you out of that lovability sphere. You can only hallucinate yourself outside of that
Mm,
lovability sphere.
mm,
So I just I'd like to end with that. I encourage everyone to feel what that feels like, to know that there's nothing you can do that renders you outside of love.
mm. That's beautiful.
Well, it was a pleasure, Rob,
Oh
and
my gosh.
perhaps we'll do it again.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Tomorrow. So, okay. Yeah. So, like I said, send me your stuff. I'll probably be able to do this as one episode because it was like 50 minutes. So I'm not 100% sure when it'll go up, but within the next month anyway. So,
Cool.
but yeah, we'll
Awesome.
and subscribe to my podcast because
Oh, yes.
you're on it now. I'll send you the link.
Did I not
Okay.
do that?
I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know. I mean, I've honestly, I've sent the link out to so many people.